The plane I'm going to teach you how to make now is what we call a delta wing. And this is the most classic paper airplane, I think. A lot of the paper airplanes you see, even in cartoons, look sort of like this one. But there's a lot you can do with it. And this is one that my dad taught me when I was a kid. And I'll show you some modifications that I've made to it. But the way you start is the same way you do on the stunt plane. You make a fold along its length, lining up the edges. Get those edges as close as you can. Make a nice crease. Now, one thing you're going to do that's a little different here is you're going to keep it folded, and you're going to make the fold from the top edge to the seam on the outside. Okay, so just like this. Line this right with the bottom. Make a seam. Flip it over. Do the same thing. Okay, haven't even opened it yet. And you're going to do that one more time. Line that seam up. Make sure, sometimes this flap will want to kick out on you. So make sure that stays put. Line up this top edge. Make a seam there. Flip it over. Do the same to the other side. There we go. And then one more fold, and you've got a paper airplane. Now, this is where it's nice to have a straight edge. You don't absolutely need to have a straight edge for this, but in the last airplane I showed you how to fold by hand, but sometimes it's nice to have a straight edge with you so that you can actually get a nice tight seam. And I'll show you. I want this seam to go from this back trailing edge, let's say about an inch from the ground. You can vary this in your design. But at an inch here, and you want it to linearly taper it down to a point. It's hard to do by eye. So sometimes it's nice to just kind of start it with a straight edge. And you see how much easier that is. Okay. Once again, not absolutely necessary, but just makes your life a lot easier if you have a ruler or a triangle like I'm using here. I fold it over so the leading edges are touching. Make a nice seam. And there you go. You have a classic paper airplane, delta wing paper airplane. Now, once again, you'll notice the approach that I used. I keep all the folds on the bottom side as opposed to the top side. That keeps, since the top side provides the suction, so to speak, in a relative sense, it keeps this the flow more uniform, better attached on the top surface. Okay, now you'll notice here, you could throw this airplane just as it is, and it would probably work fine. It might be out of trim. So there's a variety of things you could do. From the standpoint of doing this project, it'd be nice to be able to keep it in the form that you're going to analyze. So in other words, not have this gap in the middle to keep the seam closed. So there's a few things you could do. You can see if you can see this. You can take a paper clip, put it on the bottom, okay, and that will keep the top seam closed. It'll also allow you to have an adjustable CG, okay. If you want to keep it as light as possible and you want to keep it closed, kind of what you could do is just put a little piece of tape on top, just to hold the two sides together like that. Okay. So you got a little bit of dihedral on it. You don't need as much dihedral on a delta wing type airplane because the sweep back of the wing actually produces some roll stability. Now, just like with the stunt plane, let's say if I needed a way to trim this airplane, you see there's not a really good way to do it right now. I mean, I could throw it and it's going to fly how it's going to fly. There's not much I can do unless I want to put this paper clip on and slide it back and forth. That's changing two things at the same time, though. That's changing the stability because I'm moving the CG, and then it's also changing the trim. But if you got the stability that you want and you want to trim it, the easiest way to do that is you come back here. You see I've folded the wings together again so that I can cut these exactly the same. And there we go. I've got two elevators. And I can take these elevators and I can deflect them up and down. Incidentally, you see me hold on to the wing there. I should probably not have done it that tightly. You'll notice I left in the handbook, or the handout, some recommendation. Don't pick up an airplane by its wing when you're flying it, because you'll bend it, and then every time you pick the airplane up, you throw it at a trim. Okay, so try to touch the wings as little as possible once you get them set up the way you like them. Okay, so you've got these elevators that you can use to trim the airplane up and down without changing the stability at all once you get the stability the way you like it. Another thing that's kind of neat about this design is that you can do all sorts of modifications that make it look pretty cool and allow you to trim different ways. And maybe sometimes it's more looks than anything else, but I think it still looks neat. If you cut a forward angle right up to the seam line here and invert this tail, this is something I like to do on these airplanes sometimes. Sometimes I just do this and I actually don't even deflect the elevators, because this will give you all that you need. If I can actually get it folded properly. There it is. Let me check that out. I've got, you can see it better this way. Need to get the wings straightened out again. There we go. You see I've got a vertical stab on the airplane, and the fact that I cut a forward slope into it actually gives it a little angle here, and on the inside, when the air gets through there, it actually acts as a little bit of an elevator in addition to a rudder. So that's something that you can do to modify it. Another thing do here is, you see right along this fold, cut a little slot and fold the tips down, and you can kind of have these raked tips, and use your straight edge You can actually put a leading edge slat on these things. Okay, let me get it all set up again. So there you can get kind of these raked back tips, elevators, vertical tail, sort of drooped leading edge slats. You can actually make these things fly really well, really straight. Do a pretty good job in terms of endurance. Now, you know, a delta wing design is not great from the standpoint of drag. But the advantage here is that there's a lot of wing area. And so this being the same weight as the other airplane designs, even though the aerodynamic efficiency of a delta wing is pretty low because its aspect ratio is low, you can get the wing loading pretty low because there's a lot of area relative to the weight of the paper. Okay? So that is how to make a delta wing.